Hi, I'm Ben Lytle, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about existential questions, or what I call them in the book, the Potentialist series, unavoidable questions. And I'm going to talk about what they are, why they're important to our to reaching our potential and becoming wise. And then we'll talk. We'll go through some examples of existential or unavoidable questions that everyone faces, so that you can get a couple of examples. So existential questions, or what I call unavoidable questions, have been a method for people to reflect and understand life better for literally thousands of years. The Greeks used them extensively. That's where the Socratic method came from, and Socrates, and of course Socrates was one of the real fathers of modern philosophy. But it's also the basis for so many other things in life. If I was trained as an attorney, and how the ability to ask the right question is one of the ways you get at the truth. And so that skill is an essential skill of life. And it's something we don't spend enough time on in our education system generally. Outside of classical education, you're never taught much about how to ask the right question, how that helps you, guide you to make the best decisions. So given that background, one other thing that's really important to understand about questions like this is that they're not, people tend to think, oh, that's a philosophical question. Well, because it's philosophical doesn't mean it's unimportant. It's the opposite. Philosophical questions are essential in grounding you in how life really works. But it's also, these can be very personal questions. In the Potentialist book, both the first book and the second book, but extensively in the second book, The Pursuit of Wisdom, I talk about the theory of the macrocosm and the microcosm. And what that means is, it's a theory, but it also has a good grounding in science, that says that everything that works for us personally, all the issues we face, the way we think, the way our minds operate, is essentially the same set of rules or laws that guide the entire universe, guide your relationships with another person, that guide relationships between nations. And so the value of that, and it makes total sense if you think about it, why would nature have to create a different set of laws for the human species and a different set of laws for the rest of the universe? Why not create one set of laws? And that's what science continues to prove, is that these are universal laws. So in the macrocosm, microcosm, the reason that's so important is that there are some unavoidable questions that start out as a very personal question. But then, because if you're able to answer that question, it actually answers questions to you about life itself. And in the reverse, if I understand something the way it works in life, in the universe, or in relationships, or in foreign affairs, it may actually inform me about decisions about myself or about my relationships. And that's the value of this entire process. There's also some things that are occurring here in the new reality. In the first book of the Potentialist series, in actually the first 88 pages of that book, I define how the world's going to change in the next 30 years. I give my best estimate of what it's going to look like. That new reality is going to make questions more important than they've ever been in history. For a lot of reasons, but just a couple. First of all, throughout history, we've always relied on our institutions to guide us. If you went back a few centuries, it was the church, the kings, and the courts. They told us how life would work. And those institutions, of course, today include more than just government. It's government, but it's education, it's mass media, it's healthcare, so all of those institutions in the new reality are struggling to adapt and change to these new times. They can't adapt as fast as we can as individuals. And so they start to not serve us as well. And if you look around today, you'll quickly see that the institutions that I just mentioned and others are actually less respected today than they were 10 years ago. Now, why did that happen? For the reasons I just explained. Now, so one of the reasons that questions are going to be so important in the future is we're going to have to answer more things for ourselves. Those institutions are not going to give us the answers. Important answers like, how closely should I integrate with intelligent automation? No one's going to answer that question for you. You're going to have to answer that question. Second reason about the new reality, second thing about the new reality that's going to make questions more important. We're going to have to answer questions that have never been asked of human beings before. We're going to have to make decisions human beings have never made before. And the one I just gave you is a good example of that. How closely should I integrate with automation in a way that enhances my humanity rather than degrades it? That's a pretty important question, and you're going to have to answer that question. Already you've had to answer it with your phone, but now imagine intelligent automation that you work with very intimately. That's going to be a whole different ballgame. And finally, a third reason, but it's not, again, this is not an exhaustive list. It's just a few reasons why the new reality is going to require a skill in questions, both asking them and answering them, that far beyond anything we've ever had to do before. How do you think you will react or work with intelligent automation? Now, the intelligent automation you're already working with today probably are things like ChatGPT. These are called large language models, or sometimes they're shortcutted as llamas. What drives that relationship? It's questions. What drives your relationship with Google, which is much less intelligent? It's the questions you ask. And as you know, if you've worked with these large language models at all, you quickly learn that it's the quality of the question you ask more than anything else that drives the quality of the response. So that's going to be an essential skill for how we work with intelligent automation. So you put all that together, hopefully now you see this is a really important thing. And why haven't I been taught this before? Can't answer that for you. But it wasn't considered as important when the purpose of education, the purpose of parenting was giving us knowledge and information. Well, now we have lots of knowledge and information. That's right at our fingertips. But now we have to be a lot better at how we work with that. How do we sort through it? How do we make decisions? How do we ground ourselves well in a society where individuals matter more than ever and institutions are less effective than ever? So that's the critical skill here. Let's go to a couple of examples. One is the one that's in the book and is discussed extensively in the second book, The Pursuit of Wisdom, which is, does my life and how I live it matter? So because it's in the book, I'm not going to go through that whole discussion there. But I want to focus in on what happens if you don't answer that question. And I mean consciously answer it. Contemplate it. Deliberate. Become deliberate about it. And really make it an important thing for you to come to grips with. In a moment of decision, if you're unclear whether your life matters or not, you may treat your life as if it's worthless. That would be a disaster. It could be a disaster. Let's say you're about to consider doing something very reckless. If you think about how important your life is, you maybe don't want to do that. A second thing, you're in a decision where you've got a difficult situation at work, and you could either act honorably with character in how you go through that decision and go through the actions, the situation you face. But if you're unsure that the way you live your life matters, you're going to be drawn to be going down a path that will undoubtedly be the wrong decision, which is that your character doesn't matter, that what you do doesn't matter. So those are reasons why that decision is absolutely essential. It's essential for parents to teach this. It's essential for you as a friend with your friends to explain why it does. We see so many people today who've lost faith in themselves, and that leads to some very bad outcomes in life. On the other hand, it completely changes your perspective when you understand that not only does your life matter for yourself and for people who love you and want you in their life, but it matters for people you will never see. We're all familiar with the idea of the ripple flowing outward. That is an apt metaphor, because everything in your life that you do will affect people you will never see. And those ripples go forward into infinity. That means it affects the people you maybe could identify that it did, but it goes beyond them. You jump on somebody's case and you're pretty brutal about it. You come down really hard on them. You don't know what's happened to them that led them to that, to have a bad day. You don't. And because of the way you handled it, you don't know what you triggered, or what's triggered 5 years from now by that bad memory. But on the other hand, when you do things that are positive, that enhance the quality of life of the people you touch, as best you can, it has a positive effect going forward many, many years. I had the good fortune to live a long life. And I've seen what's come back to me by the people that I touch, things that I completely forgot or was never aware of. But a kindness I did, or something I did that was a difficult decision, but I made the decision that I'm proud of the decision I made, has come back to be a blessing. And so hopefully, we could talk this forever, but ultimately you have to decide this. Nobody can tell you what that answer is. You have to, in your own heart, decide, yeah, my life matters. And I'm going to live it as if it matters every day, every moment. So let's go to another one. This one is a little, perhaps seemingly, a little less existential, but actually it's not. It's actually a fundamental question. Every day, all of us have to make a decision, many, many decisions, of doing what is good for me or doing what is good for others. Every one of those decisions does not have to be an either or, but our ego will cause us to frame it as either or. It's either good for me or good for them. Can't be both. There are some that we can identify, but many times we're faced with that decision. Let's say your significant other gets a job in another town, And she either has to pass on this great opportunity, or he has to pass on this great other opportunity, or your relationship becomes now difficult because you have to figure out, okay, which is the most important? Is there a way to make it work for both of us? These are difficult decisions. But at the root of it, there's a very significant question that, again, I would phrase as being unavoidable, which is, how do I decide? How do I make those kind of decisions? What's the structure I should even think about? I mean, we deal well with the individual situation, as I just mentioned. Someone that your significant other has a job opportunity in another town. But what's behind that? What's underneath it? And that's a key to answering these questions, is always asking why. What's below this? Or what's above it in the bigger picture? You'll learn later or elsewhere in this series of videos about the law of polarity. And what these situations do is they help us find a creative solution. If you are egocentric and you're always only focused on yourself, then you never get the opportunity to find how you could have resolved it in a way that served both you and others if you struggled with it for a while. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people do. But also, you see people, I have friends, and you have, I'm sure, know people, maybe you're a person who your orientation is to do for others first and not worry about yourself. Is that right? Were we put on this earth to be martyrs? The answer is no. And we don't have to be. We should honor others, but we also have to honor ourselves. Our job is to live to our potential, and in doing so, lift the people around us. That's it. The basic oath, if you will, or self-commitment of a potentialist is, I will do my best to be my best and leave the people that I meet along the way and the world a little bit better. If you'll sign on to that commitment to yourself, that's the answer to this question over and over. And that tension of recognizing, instead of just making a snap judgment, well, if they want to do it, then that's what I'm going to do. I'll just, I'll sacrifice my best interest. That's not the right thing. Or if I always am egocentric and I just do what's best for me and the heck with everybody else, that's not a good life either. And it will come back on you either way. But if you struggle with it and you go back to that oath and you say, okay, how can I do both? How can I do both? And you hold that tension and you continue to think about it. Don't get in a hurry. What will happen is that solution will appear over and over again. That's a secret to how we grow. That's a secret to how societies grow. That's a secret to how relationships grow, is understanding to value both of those polarities, that tension, and then let the creative solution appear. This process of resolving unavoidable questions ultimately leads to us reaching our potential. Thank you.